They agree, but insist on taking Gabrielle and Jacob with them. The problem is that Jacob knows about the plan, but not Gabrielle. Hence, when they are in the shop and Jacob locks the terrorists in a room, Gabrielle refuses to come with him. Jacob doesn't waste any time trying to convince her. In the end, he makes it to the airport while being followed by the terrorists, but Gabrielle is left back in the city. The airplane takes off without her. The terrorists follow it and are able to hit a window with a bullet. Fortunately for the passengers, it only creates a crack, so if they maintain a level altitude, it will not break. Terminally ill kid named Dominic is also on the flight. Ayaz tries to chat with him, but his overprotective mother Zara asks the man to go away. Suddenly, they get a radio signal from someone in Hawaii. The conversation is cut short, but they assume that some survivors are staying in an underwater bunker, which is why they are alive. Matthew wants to leave for Hawaii as soon as possible, but Sylvie thinks going there because of an unclear message would be stupid. Meanwhile, Terenzio is furious that the captain gets to make all the decisions. He protests, and everyone comes to an agreement that they will vote to make a decision from now on. Just when things start to calm down, several alarms ring at the same time, indicating an aircraft malfunction. Upon analyzing the problems, Matthew learns that one of the terrorists who was following the plane earlier has somehow attached himself to the landing gear. If he remains there, they will not be able to land. Hence, Matthew decides to fly as high as possible, so the temperature and lack of oxygen will take him down. However, he fails to consider the cracked window. Because of the pressure difference, it breaks, causing chaos inside the plane. Things fly into the sky as the passengers brace themselves for impact. Matthew quickly brings the plane to a lower altitude, and Jacob uses a wooden board to close the window for some time. Everyone calms down, but Dominic has trouble breathing because his respiratory tube flew away. Ayaz thinks of a plan and uses the oxygen pipe to make a respiratory tube. Zara is thankful and ashamed that she was mean to Ayaz earlier. The captain tells everyone that Hawaii is no longer an option because they will never reach there on time at this altitude. The most feasible option would be to land in Attu, an Alaskan island. Moreover, the turbulence wasn't able to get rid of the hanging terrorist. This guy would be Superman if he wasn't, a terrorist. Ayaz, Jacob, and Terenzio go to the undercarriage and make a hole on the plane's floor to get a view of him. Terenzio uses his gun to point into the dark, but the criminal pulls it and almost kills him. Luckily, Ayaz comes to his rescue and shoots the terrorist dead. He becomes their hero for a few minutes before the passengers find out that he was the reason the Arab passenger died. They bury his body back in Canada, where a guy saw Ayaz cut his stomach open. Ayaz confesses he is a con artist who was smuggling diamonds from Brussels to Moscow. The diamonds were inside the Arab man's body with his consent, but he died because he didn't follow the panicking instructions. On hearing the confession, some passengers protest that Ayaz should be abandoned like the terrorists, but the overall vote falls in Ayaz's favor. As a result, he is handcuffed in the avionics bay. In the following scene, they land in Alaska and refill the tank again before taking off. Once airborne, the climatologist Horst discovers something strange. The fruits they picked up in Canada taste like they have no flavor. He thinks it is because the gamma rays are so intense that they are remodeling the atomic structure of the food. The most concerning part is that it decreases the nutritional value of the food. If this goes on, they will starve to death in a few weeks. The science in this movie is out of control bullshit. Matthew acknowledges the danger, but claims that their primary concern should be running away from the sun. He has started to lose control of himself in the past few hours. Sylvie asks him to take a rest, but he yells at her, which is unlike his normal self. The passengers decide to force him to rest and bring him outside the cockpit. Although annoyed, Matthew promises to sleep for the next few hours. A while later, they pick another signal on the radio and hear two parties talking, but the group only hears them say Stara 17. They soon figure out that the person talking on the phone is a cosmonaut in space. They are shocked that someone like that is alive, but this also means he is talking to the control room, which is on the Earth. With renewed hope for survival, they decide to go to NATO headquarters in Brussels, where it all began. At this rate, they will have 4 hours after they land in Brussels until the sun comes out. Hence, they might find some information about the secret bunker in the headquarters with Terenzio's help. Outside, Laura finds Matthew unconscious in the toilet. It turns out that the injury on his palm has been infected and caused blood poisoning. This is why he had been acting the way he did earlier. To solve the problem, they have to amputate the infected tissue. Laura says she can do the operation in Brussels if they manage to reach a hospital. However, without Matthew, Sylvie cannot land the plane on her own. The passengers beg her since she is the closest thing to a pilot they have, but she knows that she can only land a helicopter. Forrest makes her understand that if she doesn't take initiative, everyone is going to die. Following that, Sylvia is made to watch a few videos on how to land a plane. However, when she has to actually do the work, she panics. An aggressive turbulence hits, and everyone braces themselves for the worst. In the end, they go through a shaky landing, but other than that, both the plane and the passengers are safe. Everyone claps for Sylvie and enjoys the moment of achievement amidst the disaster. Not wasting much time, they divide into 3 groups to do different tasks. 2 men stay at the airport to refill the fuel. Zara, Laura, and her group bring Matthew to the nearest hospital, while Terenzio, Ayaz, and a man named Rick go to the NATO headquarters. At the hospital, they find numerous dead bodies blocking hallways. By the looks of it, people were informed about the deaths before sunrise and were trying to save their lives. Laura orders everyone to ignore the chaos and focus on saving Matthew. At the same time, Zara fills her bags with medicine for her son and for the others. Meanwhile, at NATO headquarters, Terenzio shows them the conference room where he first heard about the disaster. They cannot go through all the papers with the time they have left, so Rick decides to see if the surveillance footage has something. While he is away, Terenzio makes fun of Ayaz's Turkish descent, and the two get into a fight. Nothing like racism at the end of the world. He accidentally hits Ayaz, causing him to fall unconscious and bleed heavily. Somewhere else, Rick finds a recording of the officials talking about a bunker under a dam in Bulgaria. The place's name is Stera 17, the same thing they heard on the radio a few hours ago. Before he can go back to the guys, Terenzio comes to him and tells him that Ayaz has already left. Rick sees Ayaz's body lying in a pool of blood on the screen, but is too scared to speak. Half an hour before the sunrise, everyone boards the plane. Matthew is not in his best state, but feels better after the surgery. Terenzio tells everyone that Ayaz drove away before them, but they can no longer wait for him to return. With heavy hearts, they start the engines, when suddenly, a car stops in front of the plane, and Ayaz comes out. In the following scene, Terenzio is being handcuffed in the avionics bay. Sylvie tells everyone that if the Bulgaria plan doesn't work, they won't have enough fuel or time to reach another destination. When they touch down, everyone must be ready, because they will only have 20 minutes to drive to the location of the bunker. Ayaz is in the toilet when suddenly he gets a seizure. It lasts only for a few seconds, and he thinks it is because he has lost too much blood. However, he refrains from telling the others. When he comes outside, he is asked what he wants to do with Terenzio. Not wanting to sentence him to death, he allows the guy to come with them to the bunker. A while later, they land at a Bulgarian airport and separate into 2 groups, riding 2 different vehicles. Sylvie drives the first car and leads the way, while Ayaz drives the second one. On the way, he gets a seizure again, causing them to crash. The first car has already driven far away, and the group has no way to keep up in the short time. At an intersection, Sylvie takes the right turn and reaches a half-open gate. A passenger tries touching it and is sent flying because of the electricity. Moreover, it turns out that they have to continue pressing a button for the gate to stay open. To redeem himself, Terenzio offers to wait for the others, while Sylvie and the group go inside. Before leaving, Sylvie handcuffs him to the stand, so he won't betray them. It also confirms that he will only be free when the other group arrives. However, Ayaz and the group take a left turn at the intersection, and reach a similar gate from the other side of the dam. They use their clothes to climb up and beyond the entrance. In the end, they all reach the entrance to the bunker, even though they took different exits. The passengers are finally received by military men, who welcome them inside and affirm that they are safe here. Terenzio is left alone, asking God for forgiveness. As the sun rises, he stands facing it and asks it to do its best. In the end, he is also killed. To know what happens to the surviving passengers...
Kashi cinnamon harvest biscuits. Sweet, delicious, full like fiber. Wake up, Kashi.
Season 2 opens in a a busy restaurant, and we see a woman walking up and down, eager to satisfy all of her customers. When she stops at a particular table to take their order, she sees a man that she clearly knows, but she tries not to give out any signs. She gives them 2 menus and then walks away. When the night is almost over, the man approaches her and says he is sorry. He would never have come if he knew she works here. The waitress tells him his son needs a surgery, but is not talking about the son she saw on the table, rather their own son, and the surgery is going to cost a lot. She blames the man who doesn't care about his own son and never pays for anything when it comes to his needs. We see her son as well when she returns home, but she also gets a quick visit by her ex's new wife, who tells her that her husband told her everything and she is not going to get a family. Right next, we are taken to a shelter and a voice narrates that even if the end of the world is near, that's not an excuse for him to not brush his teeth. She narrates about the people's routine in the shelter, where they start with a breakfast and then they do some exercise. Average people also have to learn how the generators work because they are pretty useful, since they keep the temperature down and provide them with light from that day when the sun went dark. When the narration is over, we see the waitress we saw earlier. Zara and her son Dominic are part of this little community inside the shelter. Suddenly, a fire starts at the shelter storage and most of the food they had available vanishes, which results in everybody blaming everybody. The colonel, who is in command in his shelter, says that a team has to travel to Norway and get some supplies from an underground base. As the story unfolds, we see that the military is in control of all decisions taken in the shelter, and that the sun is so radioactive that destroys almost all forms of life, making even the food lose its nutritional value. We also get to meet some of the characters, one of them being Horst, a scientist who catches rats in order to let them out in the radiation under some boxes covered with various material, so he can determine if there is any material that can protect them from radiation. Unfortunately, all of the rats end up dead for now. Young Dominic helps Horst catch rats, even though his mother doesn't want him to do so. One night, he gets out of bed and goes after a rat. Zara understands that her son is up, and she runs after him, but they accidentally get trapped into the room containing the generator. The door is locked and they can't get out, and Sylvie tells them to turn the generator off so it doesn't kill them. However, that causes the heat to go up, and a group departs for the airbase in order to get a flamethrower to open the door, save Zara and Dominic, and turn the generator back on before everyone dies from extreme hot temperature. Later, Jacob, Sylvie, and the colonel reach the airbase, and they see something they didn't expect, a destroyed airbase, which makes the colonel comment that the sun couldn't have made this happen, and only a missile could have caused that kind of damage. In another backstory scene, we see the woman who assists Horst in his experiments, Laura, being in a first aid lesson, trying to perform CPR on a mannequin doll while the man who is in the same team as she tries to ask her out on a date. Even though she tells him to concentrate on their task, the man jokes around and tells her that she doesn't want to go out with him because he is from Morocco. Eventually they go on that date, but Laura's dad intervenes and takes her out of there, saying that she has shamed her family. The film cuts back to the shelter where everyone is trying to think of a solution to get Zara and Dominic out of the trap door. The door is still holding strong while the colonel takes the other two of the group back at the base's gate so they can look for some tools there, and maybe find something useful to get past the metal door. The colonel comments that they have to hurry up and travel to Norway because the destroyed airbase can't be a coincidence, and he hypothesizes that the Russians might be the ones who attacked their base so they can get in Norway first and collect the supplies. Meanwhile, back inside the generator room, Zara tells her son that she is going to get them out of there and starts kicking on an air pipe, eventually breaking it down. She tries to get Dominic to climb through it first, but he falls onto her and they both end up falling on the floor. The colonel spots the dead body of a military major who everybody considers a disgusting person, being tied up in handcuffs, and he thinks Sylvie was the one responsible for his death. Jacob tells him to let her alone because nobody liked the major anyway. Two soldiers, Felipe and Hermans, are tired of waiting and they grab their guns, threatening everyone that they will start killing Zara's friends if she doesn't turn the generator back on. The colonel returns to the base and the soldiers get distracted, which gives Ayaz an opening to attack both of them. Some bullets fly around and the colonel gets killed accidentally while inside the generator room. Zara and Dominic have no other options left since they know they are going to die, because Sylvie and the rest have no tools that can crack the door open. While Zara turns the generator back on and Ayaz cries for their loss, Felipe and Earman say they will get revenge on the civilians for killing the colonel. In the next scene, Sylvie gets a moment alone with Jacob and tells him why she was forced to tie the Major up and leave him for dead, which makes perfect sense to Jacob and tells her she doesn't have to explain herself to him. But in the meantime, Felipe finds a USB in the colonel's jacket and, alongside with Earman, watch the video footage of Sylvie handcuffing the Major, saying that they are going to get some payback. In a flashback, Ines returns in her hometown and her mother picks her up from the car, commenting that she likes she got some weight on, which is a very good thing. When Ines meets her father, he tells her he doesn't want her to meet that guy she used to date because he is merely responsible for what happened to her. The scene cuts to the shelter where Ines is cooking some food with Earmans while listening to music, and they accidentally start the fire which burned the whole season long. A group of people has gathered outside the shelter at night, and they are trying to decide who will go to the nearest airport to look for planes and fly to Norway if they really find one. Felipe says Sylvie should stay back because she is the leader of the civilians and they listen to her. Before they depart, they arrange a mini funeral ceremony for Zara and Dominic, and old man Rick says some words about them. Some of the civilians depart and start looking for a plane, while Sylvie confronts Felipe and tells him to take his stuff out of the colonel's empty room so Ayaz can sleep there when he returns. Meanwhile, Horst is having a little romance going on with Laura, who confronts him and tells him she has noticed his absurd behavior and asks him why is that happening. Horst says he is in love with her, but he knows she is in love with Ayaz and walks away. The team which departed from the shelter visits an airbase, but they find no operable planes, so they have to keep looking. Luckily, they visit another airbase and they are able to find a plane which has fuel and is able to carry them to Norway and back. Back in the shelter, Laura visits Horst in his little lab and tells him he was wrong about her and that she is not in love with Ayaz but with him. They almost kiss, but Felipe interrupts them and says there is an emergency. Sometime later, Sylvie is outside with Ines and the latter shares her story and reveals she had a problem with eating back in the day, which had resulted in her losing weight and being unable to gain it back. The two of them are also called in the control room, where Felipe tells Sylvie that they all know what she did and they are going to put her on trial. Pilots are flying the planes and they call Ayaz in the cabin, asking him what they should do if the Russians are already there, and they refuse to share the seeds with them. Ayaz says they will be fine as long as the Russians are less than 17 people, because that's how many bullets his pistol is loaded with. Back in the shelter, the soldiers are interrogating the remaining civilians. Laura tells him she has no idea about the incident with Sylvie. Horst says that the video footage lacks context because they can't hear any audio, and maybe something more was going on. Subscribe and hit that like button to help our channel grow. Turn the notifications on so you won't miss any of our new videos. Thanks for watching.
Get 3 times the cleaning power with Mr. Clean Freak.
What do you smell like? Irish Spring. Smell from a nice smelling place.
While Rick says that the Major was a sinner, but nobody deserves to be murdered. While all of them are being captive in a room by the soldiers, the team on the plane lands in Norway and they find the underground base. They walk in only to realize that all the doors are locked and they can't access to anything, so they decide to wait until it becomes night again, and look for some access cards on the dead bodies they found lying outside. In the middle of the night, a woman whose name is Gia points a gun at them and says she is the only one alive because she is the chosen one. The rest of the group plays along with it, and Gia unlocks the door and lets them enter in a room full of seeds, which she eats herself in order to stay alive. Matthew and Ayaz have a chat, and they say they need to take Gia with them, along with some seeds, because she is clearly mentally unstable. Back in the shelter, the soldiers throw a party for themselves and grab Horst and Rick, giving them boxing gloves and forcing them to fight each other for fun. Horst moves Rick to the side and he throws a punch at Felipe, which makes him very angry and beats Horst up until the ambassador stops him. Horst is sent back to the small room, and the soldiers now take Sylvie and imprison her in a cell. The soldiers use Rick as an intermediate and give him the keys to Sylvie's cell to go and check if she needs some food or water. Rick visits her cell and Sylvie tries to convince him to unlock her cell when everyone is asleep so she can get a gun and protect herself if the soldiers are going to torture her. A soldier makes a mistake and pilot Marcus realizes something is off in the shelter. Moving to Marcus and Ayaz, they are trying to communicate with the shelter while Heermans is holding a gun onto Ain's head, forcing her to lie to Marcus and tell him everything is fine. Ain's kicks Heermans and screams in the radio that the soldiers are all crazy. Ainz runs away and Heermans aims at her but decides to not shoot at her. Instead, he locks the shelter's door and lets Ainz die from the radiation when the sun is up. Thea puts her handbag and her cat in the trunk of a car, and then walking in the co-driver's seat and meeting with the ambassador, who tells her she has to get rid of the cat because he doesn't want to miss the flight to Bulgaria. Thea steps off and leaves her cat to her neighbor, saying that she will return tomorrow to get it back. The film cuts to the base in Norway and the team discusses what they should do. Some say they need to start flying within the next hour if they want to make it back to the shelter before the sun comes up, while some others argue about what they should do with the seeds, since Gia refuses to let them take any. Back in the shelter, Rick brings some food and water to Horst and Laura, and tells them that he will unlock Sylvie's cell later and she will come to get them. Laura asks Rick how he got the keys, and Rick replies that the soldiers trust him and gave him the keys so he can provide food and water to them. Laura tells him to ask Heermans what he did with Ainz, since the soldiers trust him. Rick asks Heermans about Ainz, and Heermans replies he has no idea where Ainz is, which makes Rick feel panicked and visit the ambassador for a chat. Rick tells him he is very worried because he thinks the crisis is going to happen, and also tells him everything about Sylvie's plan, which in turn makes the ambassador tell everything to Felipe. Back in Norway, the group tries to trick Gia into going with them by wearing face masks and telling her that she was right. The air outside is polluted and poisonous, but they can protect themselves if they wear face masks. They take Gia outside, but Ayaz and Osmond have a fight which makes their masks fall off their faces, and Gia realizes they have been lying at her. She runs away, but Ayaz and Jacob grab her and tie her up inside the plane. Meanwhile, Ainz is trying to get back in the bunker, but she can't open the gate. She takes a car and drives around town. She is lucky enough to find some supplies and then listen to a helicopter flying over her. She gets in the car and follows it. When the helicopter lands, 3 Russian soldiers step off it and they ask Ainz why she and her people destroyed their planes, which makes Ainz play along in order to survive. She says they blew their planes because there are mean people back in her shelter and she tried to go against them, but they locked her out to die. She tells them she can guide them to the shelter if they help her break the gate. Indeed, she guides the Russians back in the shelter and they use an explosive mechanism to blow the gate's lock and run inside. Ainz makes communication with Ayaz and tells him everything, while Ayaz tries to reassure her that they are going to take off in 15 minutes. Felipe and his men trick Sylvie and the rest into thinking that they escape, but finally arrest them, intending to lock them up and restrain them alongside Rick. Furthermore, Felipe gives the ambassador a gun and tells him he should be the one to bring justice. Luckily, the Russians start shooting and the soldiers run to check out what's happening, which gives Sylvie and the rest enough time to run and hide. However, the episode ends with Gia cutting herself loose and locking herself in the cabin of the plane. She doesn't want to leave, and so she uses a fire extinguisher to break anything she can inside the cabin in order to make the plane completely useless. Sometime later, the Russians burst in and the ambassador points the gun at them, which results in them killing him. Both sides argue about who bombarded who, and Felipe says that Ainz lied to them. In the meantime, Sylvie and the others are also arrested and thrown in a room with Rick. When the soldiers bring Ainz as well, the group agrees they need to escape or else they are going to kill them. They say that a flamethrower would come handy, and Horst says maybe they can build one by using some battery liquids and cables. He succeeds and creates a spark of fire which melts the wire mesh above their heads, allowing them to escape through the air pipes, but in order to avoid being caught, they temporarily disable the generator and use some night vision goggles to navigate their way around and avoid coming in contact with the soldiers. Meanwhile, in Norway, the team agrees to split and look for some tools that will potentially help them in unscrewing the windshield of the plane and get them in the cabin. Thea tries to convince Gia to open the door and let them in, but doesn't succeed much. While Ayaz and Marcus are loading some seeds, Ayaz gets a chance and pulls his gun on him, saying that he knows what he did. A short flashback shows us that Zara and Dominic were not trapped inside the generator room by themselves, but rather Marcus was the one who closed the door on them because the Colonel had ordered him to do so in order to intimidate Zara, who always stood up to the Colonel. Marcus feels a lot of guilt, but Ayaz tells him to fall onto his knees and points his gun at him. Back in the shelter, the soldiers restore the generator, but Sylvie and the rest have gotten enough time and they reach the helicopter. While the helicopter needs some more time to take off, the soldiers have almost caught up with them and Rick decides to not feel fear for once in his life and sacrifices for the team by driving a truck directly onto the jeep that's carrying the soldiers. The season ends with Sylvie and the rest escaping under the view of an explosion and Marcus escaping from Ayaz when the latter is distracted by a man who debarked from a submarine. The last image we see is two soldiers checking upon horse mice outside the bunker and realizing that horse finally found a way to protect living organisms from the sun. Subscribe and hit that like button to help our channel grow. Turn the notification.
Let's find the missing numbers 6. The numbers under this block exclude 6 possible cells, and the number...
The first episode starts by introducing us to Arisu, an irredeemable gamer who is stuck in front of his computer screen. His brother walks in and scolds him about an interview he set up for Arisu, but he didn't even show up. He tells Arisu that he is a parasite in this house. Arisu says that if that's so, he will leave. Indeed, he leaves his house and texts his friends, Karube, who just got fired because he was making out with his boss's girlfriend, and Chota, who just skipped work for today. When they get together, they talk about a hypothetical zombie attack. Karube says that Arisa would be the one to survive it because he is smart. He furthermore tells him to stop hanging out with him and go do something with his life. Although the mood is ruined for a couple of seconds, Karube gets Arisu on his shoulders and runs in the crowd. Chota takes pictures of Arisu to celebrate his first day of independence. But since they are in the middle of the road, they cause a traffic jam and a mild accident. They run inside the subway station's restroom to get away from the police, but suddenly there is a power outage. They walk out of the station only to realize that all the people are gone. They take a look around, but there is nobody, nowhere. Even their cell phones don't get any signal. They discuss it, and Arisu says that maybe that's not that bad. They don't have to go to work, and nobody will get angry or disappointed at them. But shortly, a large building lights up and a message appears, saying that the game will start soon. An arrow indicates which direction they have to go. They follow the directions and get into another building, where they follow more directions. Each of them gets one phone. A girl walks near them, Shibuki, and tells them they have to play the game. There is no other choice. Another girl joins them, and the instructions are announced through their phones. The name of the first game is Dead or Alive, and the difficulty of it is 3 of clubs. To clear the stage, they have to pick the right door in the given time frame, which starts from 2 minutes and constantly reduces. In the first room, the girl opens one of the doors, and she is killed since it's the wrong one. In the second room, Karube mans up and is lucky enough to choose the correct door. In the next room, the group fights about what they should do and who should open the next door and risk his or her life. Arisu puts his observation skills to work and they clear the game. When they walk outside the building, they see a 3 of clubs card laying on a table. They receive a notification on their phones that they have been granted a visa for 3 days. A man appears and tells him his visa expires today and he doesn't want to play anymore. A laser beam kills him. Shibuki says that they have to keep playing if they want to live. The first episode ends with a girl, Usagi, standing on a rooftop and watching a sky full of ready-to-kill lasers. Episode 2 starts by giving us a sneak peek into Usagi's past, and presents her going rock climbing with her father. Then we are taken back to Tokyo, where Chota tells Arisu that electronic devices don't work, but old-fashioned radios work on some frequencies. Later, the group of 4 is enjoying a meal together. Karube asks Shibuki where she was when the incident happened. While talking, Shibuki reveals that she has played yet another game before she met them. Karube blames her that she must have used the other players as bait, and she replies she did what she had to do to survive. Arisu comments that it's weird how they got into the game just yesterday, but Shibuki was brought in some days ago. They speculate on that, and Arisu adds that there must be a game master who has organized this whole game. Shibuki says that they might be inside a virtual world, similar to the real one, while Chota says that this might also be a work of God himself. Chota has burnt his leg in the first game, and he is in pain. Arisu and Karube decide to join another game to earn some more time, and maybe find a doctor or discover something new about the game. They do so, and find themselves in a group of 10 people. Usagi is one of them. The game will be tagged, and the objectives are to avoid being tagged by the one who is it, and find and touch a secret symbol which is hidden somewhere. The time they get is 20 minutes. The game starts, and the tagger apparently is a tall man with a horse mask and an Uzi, walking around and shooting people. In the meantime, time, Shibuki seduces Chota and tells him they need to work together to stay alive. Back in the game, the tagger has killed half of the participants. The remaining ones agree to work together to take him down. Arisu and Usagi will search for the symbol while the others will eliminate the tagger. Karube and 2 other players fight with the tagger while Arisu figures out where the symbol is. He walks into a room, but there is another guard there. Furthermore, to clear the game, there must be 2 players present to push 2 different buttons at the same time. While fighting the guard, Arisu shouts for help. Usagi climbs from floor to floor and reaches him. They take the guard down, press the buttons, and clear the game. Karube and another player, Aguni, have taken the tagger down. Both the tagger and the other guard are killed through a collar they wear around their necks. Karube sees the tagger's phone and it says game over. The guards are being forced to play the game just like them. Karube hears some chatter on a radio communicator. He picks it up from a dead player's pocket who was friends with Aguni, who listens to a male voice saying that the answer is now in their hands. The voice says they should return back to the beach. Karube turns his head around and Aguni is gone. And that marks the end of episode 2. In the beginning of episode 3, we see Arisu feeling guilty about the dead guard in the room. Usagi tells him that they will have to do anything to survive. Arisu and Karube return home to Chota and Shibuki and tell them about the radio and the beach. They number 3 beaches that are near them and think of going there. Shibuki says that Chota can't walk, and in addition, her visa and Chota's visa end today. Karube says they will join another game today to extend their visas and then search about that beach. Later they join a game and enter a themed garden. Standing in front of a couple of stands, the instructions say they can use any weapon they like from the ones laying in front of them. They need to also wear the goggles on their heads. The difficulty is 7 of hearts. They comment that hearts are the worst because they have to play with each other's hearts, and additionally, the number 7 is quite high, hence pretty difficult. The game is hide and seek. One of the players will be assigned as a wolf and the other 3 as lambs. In the end, the one assigned as the wolf will be the winner of the game and survive, while the others will be killed by the machinery fastened around their necks. Therefore, the lambs are the ones that need to chase the wolf. Chota is assigned as the first wolf, and they soon realize that the role of the wolf is passed upon another player when they lock their eyes to each other. While trying to figure out what to do, the role of the wolf passes from Chota to Arisu, and from Arisu to Karube. Eventually, it passes from Karube to Shibuki. When she is the wolf, she starts running in order to hide and survive. Arisu and Karube get to her, and Arisu gets to be the wolf. He runs away and hides, trying to remove the goggles from his head, but he can't. The team is divided both physically and emotionally, and Chota prays to God for help while they hurt each other with harsh words. After a few moments, they start remembering all the beautiful moments they have spent together, and they actually remember they are good friends. Arisu wants to quit the game and give the wolf role to someone else, but now the others hide from him. When there are only a few seconds left, Karube reveals himself but doesn't look Arisu in the eyes. The time is up and the chips explode, killing Karube, Chota, and Shibuki. In episode 4, we get to spend some time with Usagi and follow her through her daily routine. On a rainy day, she stumbles upon Arisu, who is laying on the road and wants to die. We are taken back to Usagi's past, when she used to climb to mountaintops with her father. She tells her father that this is the only place where she feels like herself. But a scandal breaks out involving her father, and he disappears. Back to present, Arisu wakes up in Usagi's turf and asks her why she saved him. He wants to die, just like all of his friends. Usagi tells him that she knows how that feels because she has gone through it herself when she lost her father. Eventually, she convinces him to not let his visa expire and to participate in a new game. The following game is going to take place in a tunnel road. Arisu and Usagi get into a bus and they find 3 other players sitting in it. They tell them they have cleared 4 games together and they work as a team. They receive their instructions and the name of the game will be Distance. The players will need to reach the goal destination safely and endure the trial. They try to start the bus, but it has no fuel, so they need to go on foot. One of the other players, Takuma, has sprained his ankle and he can't run. He tells his friends to go and he will stay back. The 4 other players start running for some miles until they stumble upon a panther. The panther hunts them down and gets to a player called Reizan. The panther eats him, but the others escape. On their way, Arisu sees a motorcycle that he knows runs on diesel. He says the bus back where they started may also work since it doesn't have any electrical circuits, and thus it will not be jammed. He tells Usagi and the other player Yamane to run, and he will take the motorcycle back to fuel the bus and save Takuma. Usagi and Yamane run forward and they reach a dead end. They chat for a while, but soon realize that the concrete behind them is gonna break and water is about to flood the tunnel. They start running, but water soon catches up with them and swallows Yamane. Thankfully, the bus approaches near Usagi, and she hops in before the water kills her as well. The bus is being turned over its side. When the 3 remaining players climb to the top of it, a graffiti to the side of the bus reveals the word goal, which means the bus was their goal all along, and the distance was a metric that counted how far they are from the goal. That's why the phones read 0 when they were in the bus. The episode ends with Arisu telling Usagi that he wants to find who the mastermind of this sick game is and restore the world to the way it was before. The 2 of them ride a bike and cross a bridge heading to the beach. Episode 5 starts with Arisu visiting a random game, but not entering it, and asking the players if they have any information about the beach. Arisu and Usagi are dedicated to finding the beach. Later, they split up and follow the participants into 2 different games. They spot some specific players who are wearing locker keys on their wrists. They follow them and they finally find the beach, which is a large building similar to a giant 5-star hotel. They are hit from behind and kidnapped, and they are taken to the beach's hall. Several people welcome them there, but only one of them seems to be the leader. Arisu says that they are looking for answers about the game. The leader opens the entrance to a larger room where he has been marking the cards he has gotten. He explains that only one person can leave this world and return to the normal world. To do that, one has to gather all the cards that the game rewards the players with. But since that would be impossible for one single person to achieve, they united for that sole purpose, to gather all the cards and send someone back to the normal world. The beach has a tier system incorporated, and each player is given points for the cards they bring in. In addition, the beach has 3 rules. 1. Wear a swimsuit wherever you go. 2. All cards earned by the members belong to the beach. 3. Death to all traitors, meaning that one can't refuse to cooperate with the beach. Finally, the leader says that for each full set of cards they get, they can send another person back to their ordinary world. Arisu and Usagi take a look around the small community and they get some odd looks. The leader of the beach, whom now the crowd calls Hatter, announces that he has found 2 new games and divides the people into 2 groups. Each group will attain a unique game. Meanwhile, one of the top tier members, Anne, takes Arisu to a testing to determine if he would make a good executive for the beach. The test is to determine which switch turns a light bulb on before the water levels reach an electrical circuit that will fry them all. The catch is they can't actually see the light bulb while using the switches. Arisu uses a switch and then tells another player, Kuina, to check if the bulb is hot. Since it is hot, the switch he flipped turned it on, and hence he has the answer and clears the game. Arisu returns back at the beach and he meets with Usagi. Moments later, Akuni and his crew walk in heavily armed. Kuina tells Arisu that these are the militants of the beach and warns him to stay out of their way. Arisu and Aguni have a confrontation, but Hatter walks in and puts an end to it. He calls a meeting with the executives and tells Arisu to join as well. In the meeting, he says that figure cards have not appeared anywhere, so they are probably not a part of the game. The only card they are missing now is the 10 of Hearts. He also says that his visa will expire soon and he will join the next game. The episode ends with Hatter calling Arisu for a drink and telling him that heroes are born out of a great sacrifice. Episode 6 starts with Usagi banging on Arisu's door and waking him up. As soon as he's up, Arisu says that they need to gather information. He starts talking with various people seeking answers. At some point, he hears a gunshot and sees 3 of Hatter's men walking away from a dumpster. He approaches that dumpster and sees that dead bodies are disposed in it. Arisu is approached by Kuina and her friend Chishiya, who reminds Arisu of the 3rd rule of the beach, death to all traitors. Chishiya and Kuina have a talk with him and tell him that it's a matter of time before the militants kill Hatter and take his position. And then the beach is going to be controlled by a bunch of idiots with guns. Chishiya says that he is planning to steal the cards and leave this place. Hatter has to temporarily leave the beach expand his visa, but shortly after, he is brought back with a bullet in his chest. The executives argue about who should be the next leader. Aguni's men point their guns to the executives, and they have no other choice but to vote for Aguni. Chishia has convinced Arisu to help him with his plan, and when Aguni gives his speech as the new leader, Chishia guides Arisu to the leader's room. He tells him the code to open the safe and get the cards, but the code is wrong, and as it appears, Chishia has set Arisu up. Arisu is restrained onto a chair, and they tell him that his visa is running out of time, and he can't do anything about it. They leave him there to die when the laser drills his head. Usagi is also arrested and mistreated. Chishia returns back to the leader's room and steals the cards. He is ready to flee from the beach and has a short talk with Kuina, who tells him that he should be feeling guilty about setting up Arisu. However, Chishia realizes that he can't leave, because the beach has been turned into a game arena, and the lasers will not allow anyone to get past the exit. The monitors and the speakers announce that everybody has to report to the lobby for the game. Everyone gathers to the lobby except Arisu, who is tied up. The people get their phones, and suddenly, a woman is lying dead on the floor with a knife through her chest. Episode 6 ends with the announcement of the game and its rules. The game is called Witch Hunt, and the objective is to find the person who murdered that woman and burn them into the fire of justice. The time limit will be 2 hours. The beginning of episode 7 is action-packed. The people put the blame on the girl who used to be friends with the dead woman, Asahi, and they want to throw her into the fire that's burning on the backyard. One of the executives, Mira, stops them and says that everyone is equally guilty. Anne says that everybody will have to give explanations about what they were doing for the past hour and prove it. Anne is holding a napkin with a blood stain in her hand, and the people ask her about it. Anne reveals that the blood belongs to Hatter. She extracted the bullet out of his body, and it belongs to the kinds of guns they have in the beach. Hatter was also murdered. Aguni walks in with his men and says that everyone in this room could be the witch except him. He says the witch should step forward, or else he will burn everybody. Aguni's men fire in the air, and chaos breaks out. Usagi takes Asahi and the last remaining phone that would belong to Arisu and runs away. Aguni's men start killing people and throwing them into the fire, hoping that one of them will be the witch and the game will be finished. Meanwhile, Usagi meets with Tada, who they've known since the tag league, and they form an alliance together. At the same time, Kuina and Chishia are observing the action through the cameras in the control room. Kuina sees Anne searching for something in a room and soon joins her. She asks Anne what she is doing, and Anne tells her she is looking for a chemical substance to apply on the knife and hopefully find some fingerprints on it. She reveals she used to work in forensics before she got here. One of Aguni's guards, Last Boss, gets in the way. Kuina tells Anne to go, and maybe she can clear the game while she deals with this guy. Anne leaves, and Kuina starts fighting with Last Boss. While fighting, they share their backstories. Last Boss used to be a blogger who never got the attention he wanted, and found an opportunity to be someone new when this new world emerged. Kuina was a boy who used to practice karate with his father, but one day his father found cosmetics in his room and kicked him out of the house. When we get back to the action, Kuina uses her karate skills to defeat and kill Last Boss. Arisu trips his chair over and he scrapes the tape on the floor. He manages to remove it from his mouth and he screams for help. Usagi, Tata, and Asahi walk through the hallways and they start hearing something. Usagi is able to listen to Arisu and finds him. She sets him free and Arisu starts thinking about the game. He says that he has to think like the Game Master would think. He says that the Game Master waited for the perfect opportunity to start this game. It was not coincidental. Simultaneously, Anne is examining the knife and exclaims that she knows who did it. But when she runs out of the room, she is hit by 2 of Aguni's men. While thinking, Arisu jumps up and says that he thinks he knows who the witch is, signaling the end of episode 7. Episode 8 starts with Aguni and his men having cornered all the remaining players. Aguni orders his men to kill everybody, but they have become hesitant. Arisu walks near them and says this has to stop. He says Aguni knows he can't be the witch because he had him tied up. If Aguni is not the witch himself, he will want to work with Arisu to find the witch. Aguni gives Arisu a beating and then admits he is the witch. But Arisu tells everybody that Aguni is not the witch. He killed Hatter, but not the girl. He can see it in his eyes, the guilt of killing your friends. Arisu says that Aguni could have taken over the beach because he had the guns, but he and Hatter were actually friends. The episode takes us back to some previous events, and shows us Aguni being shocked by how Hatter had turned himself into a monster, and killed many people because they hid their cards from him. Next, we also see what happened when Hatter went to play in a game to extend his visa. Aguni told him he wants to leave the beach because he has lost the only friend he had, Hatter. Since Hatter's third rule was death to all traitors, he wanted to shoot him, but Aguni shot him first. And now, Aguni wants to take everyone down with him. Arisu also says that the girl stabbed herself and she is the witch. It was all the Game Master's trick to play with their hearts. Arisu says that the killings of innocent people have to stop. Asahi stands in front of everybody and says she was a dealer for the game and she gets hit by a laser. The fire of judgment spreads even more and they take the witch's body to throw it in. The next day, Arisu and Usagi watch a video that Asahi has left on her phone. She and her friend woke up in an empty Tokyo and then were approached by a man. They were assigned as dealers, assistants who would help facilitate the games, or act as fake players who would intentionally disorientate the real players. In return, they would get 2 added weeks of life. Of course, if they said something about it, they would be killed. Asahi has shot one more video secretly, walking into the secret base where the Game Masters were hiding. They watch the games and bet on their favorite players, while laughing their suffering. Arisu and Usagi visit that place, but everyone has been killed with the signature lasers. Chishiya and Kuina also walk in that place and they have a short talk. They say that these people weren't the Game Masters. There is someone of them. An emergency broadcasting interrupts them. It is Mira who gives a short speech and sums things up by saying that the surviving players will participate in more games, and this time they will have to go against the face cards. Arisu says that at least this time they know who their enemy is. The series ends with the new group of 4 waiting for the new games to start, while staring at air balloons carrying face card banners. Subscribe and hit that like button to help our channel grow. Turn the notifications on so you won't miss any of our new videos. Thank
The movie is set in the year 2070. Many renowned scientists of the world are distressed because of the risk of a worldwide drought due to water scarcity. To prepare for such a situation beforehand, a group of researchers are sent to the Balhae Research Station on the moon. Their first experiment is performed on a fish inside a tank. They expose it to a few drops of mysterious liquid, similar to water. Initially, it causes the fish to suffocate, but then the molecules multiply, forming more water and eventually filling up the tank. In short, the fish managed to create a survivable environment on its own, thanks to the mysterious liquid. Although the first experiment was a success, something mysterious causes the station to close soon after, and the base is forgotten. 5 years later, in 2075, the forecast comes true, and the world is hit with a critical worldwide water shortage. It has resulted in an all-time infant mortality rate due to various infections and diseases caused by the consumption of contaminated water. Government and private organizations in South Korea are vigorously investing in mega vertical farms in hopes of reducing water usage. Moreover, the government has divided the public into separate groups, and each group gets different quality and quantities of water, depending on the group's importance to human survival. Expectedly, the scheme isn't popular with most of the general public, as they are now deprived of clean water. Then, we are introduced to a Korean space agency named SAA. The agency, led by Director Choi, is planning to send a crew to the Balhae Lunar Research Station. It is the same abandoned research facility on the moon where the fish experiment was conducted. It hides many government secrets, some of which might even solve the water problems on Earth. The crew consists of 9 members, all led by Captain Han, a soldier for the space agency. The mission is especially dangerous because in the last research, 117 crew members died in phase. They are told that the deaths were caused due to a radiation leak, and Dr. Song doesn't want to believe it. For the mission, Choi has roped in Dr. Song, an astrobiologist. She initially turned down the mission, but later changed her mind for the sake of finding out the truth about her late sister, who also lost her life in the Balhae accident 5 years ago. As a reward, Dr. Song is given a lifetime gold membership, which gives her unlimited access to safe and clean drinking water. Director Choi briefs the crew about the mission. It turns out that they have to retrieve at least one capsule of a research sample from the station on the moon. However, the information on what the samples consist of is supposedly lost and unknown. All they know is that the samples must be kept at a regulated low-temperature range. Dr. Song suspects that the SAA is purposely withholding information about the parcel's content, but still decides to go on the mission. On the day of the takeoff, the main pilot is replaced by a pilot named Jisoo. The crew isn't happy with the last-minute change, but Captain Han orders everyone to stick it out. The spacecraft takes off and safely enters the Earth and later the Moon's orbit. However, during the landing, it malfunctions, and they crash on the Moon's surface 7.6 kilometers northwest of their destination. The mission spacecraft falls off a cliff, and the surviving crew is forced to travel to the station by foot. A former researcher at the Balhae station, named Wang, has sustained serious injury. Halfway through the journey, he stops and is unable to continue. Since he has been to the station before for research, he seems to know something that the others don't. He tries to convey a message to the crew but ends up passing away, dealing a serious blow to the crew's morale. Nevertheless, they continue their journey and almost run out of oxygen. When they reach their destination at Balhae Station, they desperately fill up the tanks and manage to survive. The series then flashes back to the past, and Dr. Song is seen trying to find out the truth about her sister's death. She opens an encrypted file from her sister's workstation, trying to find out what she was working on at the lunar station. She eventually cracks the code, and a message pops up on the screen that reads, "Find Luna." Back to the present, the crew comes across an old corpse that has physical signs similar to that of drowning. They're confused because there couldn't possibly be enough water on the moon for a person to drown and die. The crew is not able to identify the dead body from their database, and are puzzled to see an automatic weapon in the corpse's possession, suggesting that he was a mercenary. Moreover, all the systems of the station are functional, and the station lacks the dangerous radiation that had allegedly wiped out the staff 5 years prior. Dr. Song's belief that SAA is keeping them in the dark becomes stronger, and she suggests performing an autopsy of the corpse, but the captain orders everyone to stick to the plan and look for the command center instead. They eventually locate the center and bring the massive facility back to life. However, the communication system is down, and the crew isn't able to contact mission control. The radiation levels in the control room seem normal, unlike what the mission control had told them. Dr. Song boldly takes off her life support to prove that they are not surrounded by high levels of radiation, and then everyone follows her lead. Bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for them. She again suggests performing a full inspection of the station, but Han reminds her that it's not their job to investigate the cause of the Balhae accident. They are here to retrieve the samples, which is their first and only priority. There are 3 storages in the facility where the sample could possibly be found, so the crew splits up into teams and searches the station for viable samples. A crew member named Dr. Hong, a soldier, E2, and the captain head for Storage 1. Taisuk, Sun, Su Chan, and E1 are sent to Storage 2. Meanwhile, Chief Gong, Dr. Song, and Jisoo go to Storage 3. Dr. Song tells the crew that as soon as they locate the capsule, they must check the thermoregulator to make sure that it's at an extremely low temperature. On the way to Storage 3, Jisoo reveals that Captain Han returned back from retirement on this mission for a special purpose. He wants to get his sick daughter access to a higher class of water. It turns out that after the Great Drought, 1 in every 10 children passes away. Meanwhile, Team 1 comes across a jammed gate. When they force open the door, they come across a number of corpses, frightening the team. A quick assessment of the situation shows that the victims were desperately trying to escape, and the area was shut down in an emergency right after the accident. The situation is contrary to the government report, which stated that the victims died way before the shutdown. Dr. Song observes the bodies remotely from her wrist computer and comments on their characteristics of drowned bodies. She insists on checking the infirmary to access their medical records, and Han rudely turns her down, telling her to take her mind off of her personal curiosity. The first and second group eventually reach their respective destinations, but the visible capsules are empty or missing, and the storage units look as if someone already raided the place for the samples. In the meantime, Team 3 detects a foreign presence moving around the station. When the head of security, Gong, goes around to inspect, Jisoo tells Dr. Song that he knows about her late sister and empathizes with her. He also reveals that if she wishes to check the infirmary to get to the bottom of the truth, he would cover for her. After a brief pause, Dr. Song decides to utilize the opportunity. Somewhere else, crew member Su Chan of Team 2 sees a corpse with a capsule in his hands. He touches the corpse, which, upon contact, releases minuscule particle droplets that enter Su Chan's eyes. After Dr. Song leaves for the infirmary, Jisoo enters Storage 3 on his own and looks around for samples. In the process, he drops his flashlight. When he tries to fetch it, some invisible force seemingly pulls it away, frightening the hell out of him. He collects himself and brushes it aside as a hallucination. Back to Team 2. After failing to locate a viable capsule, they head back to the command center. Han, on the other hand, monitors Dr. Song's movements from his watch and orders her to rejoin Jisoo immediately. Inside Storage 3, Jisoo notices a viable capsule near the flashlight and manages to retrieve it. The capsule appears to be filled with water. When Dr. Song returns to Storage 3, she notices some unknown entity attacking Jisoo and lifting him up in the air by his neck before dropping him to his death. Dr. Song also notices the entity taking the capsule away before disappearing. Don't go in there!
If YouTube Premium, you can download videos. We're still watching. Get YouTube.
Soon, others arrive and learn about the incident. As expected, they find it hard to believe Dr. Song's account, but a quick analysis of Jisoo's body reveals a fractured skull, ankle, and arm, which couldn't have possibly resulted from a fall. Han orders everyone to return to the command center before going through Dr. Song's body camera with Gong. It turns out the intruder escaped through the ventilation system. Since the intruder realized the value of the sample and hence took it away, Song theorizes that the intruder is a human. Back at the command center, team member Tai-Soo tries to establish contact with Mission Control, and after failing to succeed, he hypothesizes that there might be a problem with the radio tower inside. Suddenly, Su Chan starts shaking violently and expels unnatural amounts of water. Dr. Han orders everyone to step back and put on their hazmat suits. Han, Gong, and Song also learn about the situation and rush back to the command center. Dr. Han tries her best to save Su Chan, but he eventually dies from drowning symptoms. Much like the corpses littering the station, Dr. Han tells Han that they must quarantine Su Chan's body until they determine the exact cause of death. She proposes moving him to the main lab infirmary and performing an autopsy right away. Chief Gong is shaken by his brother's death, and Han attempts to comfort him. Han also finally gives Song permission to go through the medical records of the Balhae crew who lost their lives in the accident. The crew also learns that the entity that killed Jisoo can access areas that are not in the station's blueprints. Han decides to search the ventilation shaft while team members Tai-Soo and Sun are ordered to establish contact with Mission Control. Sun is severely demoralized by the recent events, and Tai-Soo tries to cheer him up while trying to establish communication with Mission Control. Dr. Han performs an autopsy of Su Chan's body, while Song and another soldier named E1 unsuccessfully try to access the encrypted medical records of the crew who lost their lives in the accident 5 years ago. Song decides to secure tissue samples from other bodies and to trace them back to when Su Chan's symptoms broke out. Meanwhile, Han, Gong, and E2 enter the ventilation system to look for the entity and come across drawings seemingly made by it. Soon, they notice a biosignal approaching them from the front and wait to come face to face with the entity. However, it passes them by. As Song collects tissue samples from the dead bodies, E1 wonders if he also got infected since he suddenly calls Song back to the infirmary. The latter asks E1 to take care of the samples for her before heading back. On her way, she suddenly stops before the down storage chamber of her station. After a brief pause, she rejoins E1 to collect more samples. Afterward, they return back to the infirmary, and Dr. Han reveals that Su Chan had been put to death. The water rose up from the inside. Song goes through the samples.
Go to bed. We buy some food. You hungry?
card. Sorry about that. Yeah. Just get it. Fingers card?